welcome sentient beings from all known universes and beyond. It's time to activate your cranial downlinks and prepare to receive a raft of discussion on a cosmic ocean of science fiction and fantasy topics, interviews with local area genre devotees, and insightful prognostication by our soothsayers of science fiction, our forecasters of fantasy, and any other beings that happen to get caught in our gravity well. This is the Galactic Driftwood Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. There aren't many people here this week.
No.
So I'm Seth.
And I'm Chris.
And
that's
we're
it for
here
today.
This week. So
Indeed.
okay. We're who they come for, right?
Yeah, we're actually the talent here. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed to say. And you know what I just did today? I just backed a Kickstarter.
Ooh.
And it happens to be the one we're going to talk about today. Which is
And what
even better.
Kickstarter are we talking about today, Chris?
DC20.
What's that?
Well, I tell you to roll initiative, but we won't get into any of that quite yet. But so DC20 is kind of it's a next gen improved take, maybe I would say, on Dungeons and Dragons 5e. Taking what we love about it, what some of us may hate about it, finding room for improvements, and coming up with a DC20 based system that's somewhat, in my opinion, improved over what a lot of us have been playing for many years now. And what'll be interesting, and to be clear, this isn't out yet. There's a lot of content out there going over what's changed and everything like that. But so far, it looks promising. There are things that change maybe the attributes that you're used to using. There's some changes that make high rolls actually matter within the gameplay. It's in some areas it's intended to speed up things like combat. But we'll, Seth and I will be talking about that today and kind of go through it. And, as I've reviewed a few items in there, there are some things I think absolutely will speed up combat, some things that won't. But we'll dive into all of that, and I think it'll be pretty interesting. For some, it might be simpler. For others, it might be a little bit of a shift because, again, you're changing to another system. If you're like Seth and I, you bounce between Pathfinder and 5e or other systems for that matter. But this is one I'm looking forward to going into 2025. And so with that, Seth, you want to bring up the Kickstarter and we can kind of show people what we're talking about? There's definitely people out there already talking about this, but this is newer for us, something we've been following. We thought we'd take a stab at it today.
Yeah, and this is one I've been following for a little while. I think I first found this is by the Dungeon Coach. Real name I do not know, but he's a popular YouTuber around Dungeons and Dragons, hence Dungeon Coach. He wrote his own. Writes his own content, does videos previously talking about other RPGs, probably mainly D&D 5e. The DC20 was actually the first time I'd really taken notice of him. But yeah, he's in the process of making the system. It's in Kickstarter right now, and they're in a kind of a beta test phase for it, where they're still adding and refining rules and whatnot and getting the system into its final shape. But even so, it does have a lot of it's got a lot of promise.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple points where I'm iffy, but we'll hit on that.
Yeah, so it looks like one of the first key changes there is the attributes.
Mm-hmm.
So in this system, there's only 4. As you can see here, might, agility, intelligence, and charisma. And traditional D&D 5e, there's actually 6: strength, dex, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma, which is a lot. But you can kind of play with in your role playing those different attributes and what you roll for different things. But this simplifies that process.
It does, and it's a process that a little bit needed and wanted simplifying, I think. In D&D 5e, and this is one of the things that I really like, and I don't know if I see it on the list here, but in D&D 5e, every class has its own kind of main attribute.
Yes.
Fighter might, and you've got some choices there. Fighter might be strength if you're going for your big burly fighter, or dex if you're going for a dexterous fighter. But every class kind of has that one stat that you can't do without, and you have to put most of your points in, no matter what. One of the things that drew me to DC20 is that they don't do that. You have what's called a prime. Every class, or you just have a prime stat, and you get to decide what that is. So if you want to play a smart fighter who fights with his brain, you can have your intelligence be your prime stat. You can have it be charisma. It's whatever you want it to be. So in the case of like a fighter who's using intelligence, when you roll for some of the class features, you would roll intelligence as opposed to might.
Yep.
And there's
go ahead.
There's a lot that they have done to really make character creation customizable, which I like.
Yeah, I think I was going to say, with the way that system has been modified, it really lends, in my opinion, more to the role playing aspect. You get a lot more diversified characters. To your point, a fighter with high intelligence. Now that you're rolling for intelligence, you can role play how your fighter might fight differently using his intelligence to maybe outwit or outsmart or outmaneuver, as opposed to just pure strength of a fighter to overpower his enemy. He could use his brains, and you can roll all that into the role playing, which is actually pretty awesome. So. Or it could be like somebody with really high charisma, and he just looks so good that people are flustered every time they look at him. It's like, boy, I can't hit that beautiful face, right? I don't know. Well, who knows, right?
You could play a wizard with might as their primary stat, and you activate spells by flexing your muscles. And then people around you just die because that's how your magic works.
Whatever you do, do not let him flex.
But yeah, I love that level of customizability that like this brings in. And from things I was watching, your stats will probably change more than in D20 or 5th edition. Not entirely sure, but there's room for growth here, and I like it.
Yeah. So we again, not all the details are kind of derived out of this yet, and there's a bunch of content and maybe even some example play online that I've seen of people kind of going through beta versions. But it would be interesting to see how that plays out when we get to the final edition. As Seth mentioned earlier, again, this stuff is still very much in beta. And the core of the game is done, but they're hashing out through, like you would any game, through trial and error and beta runs, and finding errors or improving things to speed things up. So pretty cool.
Yeah, the next thing on the list also really interests me, this 4 action point system. So have you watched any videos on this?
Only a little bit. And so this is one of the ones I actually hope we talk a little bit about, because I've seen a little bit how it's going to be a change, but I think it's a better one. So on the action points, and Seth, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'll try and recall this here, but you can spend these 4 action points any way you wish. And traditionally, you're used to having, a standard action or 2 and a bonus action and maybe a reaction or whatever that you can leverage on like your turn.
Yeah. Yeah, see, in D&D, it's a move, action, bonus
Right.
action, and then you've got a reaction,
Yeah.
which
All
you
within your turn, and this changes it a little bit. For the better, I'll add. So in this new 4 action point system, I believe you can. I won't say stacking is the right word, but you can even combine your action points to make a bigger impact on something. If you want to make a big attack, or make something count, right? Instead of using 1 action point, maybe use 2 action points for that. In that same vein, if you decide that you want to repeat an action, you could, in that first example, you
move
might have
your
advantage on
action.
something. But yeah, if you repeat something over and over, you would start getting disadvantage towards it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's incentives to go one way or another, and I also think that helps play into the whole role playing aspect of it, and it makes your decisions, I think, in your roles and the actions that you take. What I feel like at the core of this, just even getting, rolling the second bullet point here, is your roles here matter more. Your actions that you take matter more. You have more impact. It's not just about success and failure, it's how that success happens or how that failure happens.
Mm-hmm. And getting into the third point on this is where I think it's really going to be great in revitalizing combat, because your action points, you can spend those to make reactions. So in the standard Dungeons and Dragons, or 5th edition, you've got 1 reaction. So you attack someone,
Mhm.
not on your turn when they provoke an attack of opportunity, or for a class ability, that's your reaction. It's gone. In this, if you attack someone for an attack of opportunity, or for a class skill that would let you act outside your turn, you spend an action point. And the nice thing is, you don't have to hold back on your turn. You get all of your action points back at the end of your turn, not at the beginning of your turn.
That's
So
interesting.
yeah. So you go through other people's turns, and you've got all your action points, so you can remain in combat and an actual part of it affecting the battlefield. Uh, and then when you basically have to decide how many points you're going to want to have when your turn gets around. Are you gonna need to move and attack twice? Well, then you're gonna need 3 points. But if you're only going to need to attack once because you're already in position, you've got 3 points that you can maybe use to take reactions. And that will. In one of the biggest problems with combat in 5e is, if it's not your turn, you're pretty much just waiting,
Yeah.
waiting for your initiative. Which,
Now, it in that flow though, it's very much turn based, and this sounds like it allows more people to get engaged more regularly, so you're not sitting there waiting. But to me, that also sounds a lot like that could be, not to use too strong of a word, like a nightmare for a DM on controlling combat a little bit, where everybody's kind of maybe jumping in at the same time to maybe try and take an action. And so, how do you think you would deal with that as someone? I know that DMs a lot.
I mean, I don't think it'll be too hard, because it depends on what triggers those reactions. You're not just free to take your actions anytime.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just say, okay, now that that guy reached that spot, I'm going to use one of my my action points to cast magic missile at him. That's not how it works. I mean, it's kind of
Mhm.
similar to how D&D works now. It's an evolution of the system. So, like right now, you only get a reaction if somebody triggers something. And I imagine it'll work largely the same way. I mean,
Yeah.
we won't know for sure until,
Yeah.
well, I mean,
Exactly. That's it.
one of us could have watched one of the live plays, but
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't have time for that today.
So right, I didn't either, and that's where I said, I know that content is out there, and haven't had a chance to go through and see how some of that works. The last one I went and looked through was, I think, like 2.5 hours long, which I think is the one linked on this page. And we'll get to that if we scroll further down. But there's actually a link here where they go through an example gameplay that includes combat and stuff. Uh, uh, the dungeon coach goes through with a group of guys and kind of play tests this. But so far, what I've skimmed through was actually pretty cool, and just it's a little bit different, but it is pretty cool. So,
Yeah,
but it'll be interesting to see how reactions play out.
I spent a fair amount of today like looking or watching the dungeon coach's videos on this. 'Cause he does a really good job of presenting the system and explaining it. And his rule set is making a lot of sense, but it's like one of the things I was watching is character creation today. And what's kind of interesting is what's interesting is how like character creation, he's created a checklist for it.
Huh.
So that even a newbie can come in and be like, okay, step 1, I fill these out. Step 2, I do this. Step 3, I do that. Step 4, that's where it's located on the page. So he's got a step-by-step process to walk someone through character creation. And it's a system that can be both very simple or very intricate if you really want to get into making complicated characters. That's
That's actually pretty interesting, because that was something that I always had to go find, even myself, like someone's guide on character creation to make sure I covered everything, because it wasn't always straightforward. How do I get all this stuff filled out in my character sheet? How do I know where I add my bonuses in and all that kind of stuff? And thankfully, things eventually came along, like D&D Beyond, where they have character generators and stuff for you. So it did get simplified after a while, but I do remember it was almost like going through, to draw a loose comparison, a deck building exercise with like Magic the Gathering or something, where you spend a considerable amount of time putting everything together before you get into playing the game. And in D&D, earlier on at least, always kind of felt like that when it came to character creation. So it'll be interesting to see how they improve or take on that to make it easier for newcomers as well as maybe veterans, and quickly getting through that process, or not if you really want to dig into it. An ancestry creation system is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's another one that looks really good. Instead of race, they're going to have ancestry. And and that is another thing that's going to be customizable. So if you decide you want to play an orc, well, you can take just the orc block.
Mm-hmm.
But every race's abilities and features are kind of statted out by points. So if you want to play a half orc, half elf, you can take a feature from the elf and a feature from the orc, and you've got a half orc, half elf, and you've kind of customized exactly the way you want that ancestry to work. And I really kind of like that. So, if you're yeah, you can make a very unique character. Like, you could make something that's like pulls a point from human, pulls a point from elf, and pulls a point from tiefling. It sounds really interesting, and especially that makes ancestry kind of much more important again, because it's something you're coming up with. You could go as simple as, yeah, parents were elves, or you could be like, no, my ancestry's weird. I had a bard for a dad.
Yeah, again, playing into that whole enhancing the RPG as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and I was watching a video on the classes today, kind of like moving on to the next point. And one of their chief goals was to, one, make the spellcasters different and unique for every class, and 2, bring the martial classes kind of up to the spellcasters level, because there's a real drop off in power potential in 5e if you're not a spellcaster.
Yeah, that's true. And you don't have in MMOs, in terms of like they tend to find balance between a lot of the classes by finding how do we balance, your DPS, your damage dealing abilities and things like that. And there is a gap there, I think, in some respects, depending on your class, and spellcasters has just kind of been an outlier in 5e. But yeah.
Yeah. In fourth edition, they kind of went the path of balance by basically making everyone the same.
Yeah.
Like, it was so bad, I hated it, because it was like everyone had an ability that did 2d6 damage,
Yeah. And that
and
was it. It was basic. Yeah.
yeah, it was just called different things. 5e's done a pretty good job of bringing flavor back to the classes, I think, but there's still a lot it could do, especially with the half-caster classes like
Mhm.
Artificer and Ranger. Like, those are interesting, but definitely not as good as some of the other like full caster or focused classes.
Yeah.
Uh, and another thing that what they're doing with martial classes is really interesting, in that you're getting class abilities that rely on a new type of resource called stamina that power your abilities. And what you're doing then is, like, every class has its own unique way that it gets stamina back. So a barbarian gets their stamina back whenever they take a heavy hit or deal a heavy hit.
Nice.
So you don't have much stamina, but the idea is you use it, then you get it back, then you use it, then you get it back, and you've got a kind of fun, unique gameplay loop for that character concept.
I will add, going back on spellcaster specifically, and maybe this is there's some elements of 5e where it's similar for marshals, but there's no longer spell slots, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole point of mana points is you no longer are dealing with spell slots, and with mana points, much like with the action point system, you don't have to just spend 1, 2, or 5 to cast your spell. You can like the way they would handle, I guess we call it like upcasting, right? Or casting up
Mhm.
on the slot, is you would combine your mana points. So again, we're enhancing the spell that you already have, adding some flavor to it for the role playing aspect. And maybe your cantrip of magic missile, instead of 1 or 2, maybe you go all out and you have 5 mana points and you use 5. You used it up, but you've done something unique in your turn, and maybe that extra few magic missiles counted or something. And for marshals, it's the same deal with stamina points. So again, there's some pretty cool things you can do in terms of combining your points to make things count.
Yeah, and they've the dungeon coach and his team is really trying to make each of the caster classes play differently too.
Huh.
So a sorcerer, this was interesting thing that caught my attention, was the sorcerer can overload their spells, because their chief idea is that they are the pinnacle of arcane power, or whatever type of power they're
Okay.
using.
Mhm.
And so you can overload your spells, which lets you push and get more of an effect, but will also deal damage to you. So the example that he gave is a pyromancer who's literally burning themselves alive to have a better effect on the battlefield, which sounds really interesting to me. A little bit of risk, a lot of reward, maybe.
Yep. Mhm. That's pretty cool.
But
I had not looked into any of the skill challenge stuff. I do know that changed as well.
mhm.
Combat, social, and exploration, but I don't know much on those aspects.
Well, we're bringing back a feature of D&D 3.5 and Pathfinder that I've actually really missed, which is skill points.
Mm-hmm.
Intelligence is now handy again for getting you skill points, and you use skill points, of course, in the normal way,
Yep.
except it works a little bit differently. So it's more like skill ranks. So every skill, it looks like, has 5 ranks. Every rank gives you a +2 to that skill. So yeah, and your max rank is limited by your level. So at the first level, you can have like 1 rank, second level, 2 ranks in a skill. And I really liked that way of just like getting or customizing characters. Like in 5e, you have the skills you have because they're all kind of based on your class skills and then your stats. There's no
Yep.
real choices outside of character creation. But in D&D 3.5 and Pathfinder, you get skill points every level, so you can choose what you get better at. You're like, okay, uh, I've been referencing my knowledge arcana quite a bunch, so I'm going to put as many points in that as I can. But at the same time, I want to be better at picking locks, so disable device.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed that aspect of leveling up in other systems. But yeah, I haven't seen too much on the social mechanics or the exploration mechanics.
Yeah, I
So
haven't seen much on that yet either. A lot of the key things I saw were built around, what things have greatly improved or changed maybe a little bit the most. And a lot of that is around how combat works, things people are really interested in, what key things. Maybe we can scroll down a little bit and see some other things in here that kind of stand out or call outs of this Kickstarter. Reminder, so if you missed it at the top, the goal for this was only to raise like $20,000, and they're already at well over a million. And now they have a stretch goal for 1.7, which includes some extra kind of special stuff, which is kind of cool.
yeah,
Looks like
I
they're
did.
doing physical and digital content.
Yeah, the artwork is absolutely great. Yeah, if you back it, you get beta access,
Yep.
which has, I think, at this time up the preview is up through the second level what they've released. So uh like they have some simple adventures that take you through the second level, basically enough to get kind of a taste, whet your appetite. Let's see. So yeah, there's a lot that it looks like they're doing, and right now it's just the player's book. I'm guessing if this is successful, they will have much more in the way of content for us. But yeah, the dynamic spell casting seems really cool. I'm looking forward to give that a try.
Yep.
So one thing though that if I'm not outside of like damage is very limited in this. So and there's something called true damage. So they're reworking a lot. You're
Yeah.
not going to be rolling dice for your damage. Actually, every weapon basically deals a set amount of damage and has some different properties that would make it important. But usually, you're going to be dealing damage in a range of somewhere from 1 to 5, maybe.
Hmm. And a lot of that's based off of like your D20 roll, right? In terms of
Hmm.
what you get in that range kind of spells out the events that take place and stuff. So this is where adding in the dynamics is where some of the spell casting is where I had some concerns, and the more we talk about it, it's a little bit less. But Yeah, I don't know. We'd have to go through and play test a little bit and maybe do
Yeah.
like a one shot and see how we like it. That's the whole point of this and why you do testing and get feedback and see what about the system you like or don't like. But there is a lot of changes I feel at first glance, just kind of reading through some of the spell changes that it's going to be different, and a lot of it could again be shifting from someone who plays Pathfinder and 5e to now another system, um, which is going to feel, I think, vastly different. Um, but I think there's definitely going to be some ease of use and going through the spells. It's just going to be flat out better. Especially since, if I recall, they're removing basically the all the DC checks and some of the other things that you always had to go through with spells. I'd love
Mhm.
that, honestly. That's going to be a huge saver on gameplay, not having to go back and look a lot of that up all the time.
Well, and also like in 5e, very few things suck as much as using a high level spell and
Yeah.
then having it have no effect at all
Yes.
because of some
Frustrating AF.
dice
I mean,
check.
this is someone who usually plays a spellcaster. So yes.
Mhm. But something else that I like about this, and I may just steal because I've seen it in a couple other systems, is the high roll rules.
Yeah.
Whereas if you attack someone and you beat that DC by 5, you're gonna deal more damage because it's a heavy hit. If
Yeah.
you beat it by 10, it's a brutal hit and you deal even more damage. And I like the sound of that.
Yeah. As opposed to you successfully hit them. And it like
Yeah,
yeah, you could obliterate their DC and it just doesn't matter.
yeah. If they've got an AC of 12 and you roll a 28,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you really hit them, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, like they say here, rolling high is gonna be exciting again
Yeah.
because if you roll high, you're gonna get rewarded for it.
I think
Meanwhile,
that'll help a ton with player engagement.
mm-hmm,
Instead of like again, and I said this a couple times, it's the old systems are based on success and failure, but your rolls ultimately, unless you roll like a nat 20, is very rare or very few scenarios, or depending on the weapon, what its crit ranges are, that your high rolls really matter. And in this one, the whole range kind of does. And the better your roll, the better the impact that you have, which is awesome.
mm-hmm. Yeah, something that we haven't heard anything about, but this, like weapon properties, each weapon has a unique property based on its type: axes, swords, hammer. Your character gains passive and activatable benefits depending on your loadout. To me, that means equipment's going to be important again,
Hmm.
and I like the sound of that because like equipment in can be very important, but often it's just hand waved away. It's not an important part of very many campaigns, or
Yeah.
at least it hasn't been an important part of ours because it's so easy to just kind of focus on. Okay, well, after the first level, you just need your magic items, and that's the only thing that matters as part of your build. This I like. I like that it could give you options. There is a lot to look for here, and a lot I'm really interested in finding out because I want a system that is easy to pick up yet crunchy enough for experienced players to still enjoy.
Yeah, so let's go into some of the content here with the Kickstarter. So they have a section here called "What's in the Book." Keep going down a little bit. But I also want everyone to know that's listening or reading this is that it's not just a core rule book either. There's going to be like a monster book, an advanced guide. I think there's a magic items one and stuff like that. But this is a full core rule book that everybody can use. Got your classes, all your rules and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. Looks like they got some sample rules below this. You're
Mm,
right that the artwork looks pretty great.
yeah, they've got some good people on. I recognize this actual artwork for the
Uh,
commander from a comic that's been going around for quite a while. Uh, a D&D based comic that's really good.
uh-huh.
Uh, And this isn't even all the classes that they're adding yet, because in the video I watched today, he said Artificer is coming as well,
Cool.
which I love. Like, Artificers are great, and they need more love.
Warlock, I love it. Ooh, Spellblade. I'm gonna have to look at that.
Yeah, that's right up your alley, man.
Yeah. Oh
It's
man.
Tanjiro right there.
Holy smokes! I have to look at that. Right next to Warlock. I've been favoring Warlock lately, but I am a big
Mhm.
spell guy. But Spellblade looks, right up there at the Magus tier. So that could be interesting. I'm gonna have to dive into that. I'm even more excited.
I'm looking forward to their reimagined Monk. That's going to be a real
Yeah.
interesting class as well, because they gave it some real love to kind of beef it up to balance out the other, be balanced with the other classes. Monk is it's kind of a derided choice in 5e, even though when you play one, they're really, really fun. So, but their power level is a bit underwhelming for later levels.
Hmm.
So I'm looking forward to seeing a monk that plays well through the whole game.
Very cool. So I got some sample rules,
Yeah,
reward
reward
tiers.
tiers. I mean, you can check out all these if you visit the
Yep.
Kickstarter. And I do suggest that we'll put out a link. It's still going for another 11 days.
Yep.
And it's just going to keep getting more and more meaty with the last few weeks or last 10 days or so, because it's getting pushed by a lot of big names. D&D Shorts, I watch a lot of his stuff. He's
Mhm.
really excited for it, as are some of the other real big creators.
Yeah. Very,
Um,
very cool.
mhm.
I guess before we wrap up, I wanted to bring up a couple other upcoming things out there as well that fall into the tabletop realm. One actually being what's next for D&D, and that
Yeah.
is the new core rule book or handbook that's coming out with some key changes. I can't speak too much to that currently. I do know that it's going to be like released out in phases, so you're not going to have all the books out at once. Apparently, I think you may have linked about that earlier today or yesterday. So there's what are they calling it? 2024 or 2020?
Yeah, I
Uh,
think it's D&D 2024. I'm not
yeah,
sure. Like, this isn't a actual whole new rule set. It's supposed to
yeah,
be a backwards compatible uh update
refresh.
to the
Yeah,
rule.
update, refresh, whatever you want to call it. So that's out there, and it just recently came up for pre-order, I believe. So you could start, if you're interested in that, you can start placing orders for that now. Um,
Yeah, you can also check out the new content as Wizards is drip feeding out basically previews through a bunch of creators who work with them.
yeah,
Uh, Ginny D's got a new breakdown of the new Bard that I want to take a look at.
yeah. So there'll be some reworks in there. Nothing major, but definitely some changes to some classes. I think new classes as well, maybe a handful more.
I think new subclasses. I haven't heard any
Subclass,
new
subclasses, maybe is what it
classes.
was. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
they're bringing in a capoeira bard, which is basically a monk bard that that will
nice,
fit right into a character concept I have.
nice. Yeah. So there's D&D 2024. Go check that out as well. Other exciting things going on.
Daggerheart
Daggerheart. Yep. So the folks over at uh, Critical Role, Matt
Mercer.
Mercer, thank you. And another acquaintance of his, apologies, I forget his name at the moment, but been working through a new system altogether that works very much like your D&D. It's based off a different system, a D12, which has some different mechanics based off of, I want to say, hope and fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not going to get too much into the details unless you have stuff to add to that stuff. But it's another system that's out there that's currently being play tested and is in beta and is out there available for you to go out and try and maybe do a one shot with your friends or your normal groups to try out. But just be aware that system is out there. So the next year is going to be exciting. So expect to hear a lot from Seth and I.
Yeah.
Probably delving into some of this stuff and trying it out.
Yeah, and those aren't the only two.
Yeah,
The
those aren't the only two.
MCDM is coming out. I think Cobalt Press has something coming out. Like, we are kind of seeing the what the end phase is going to look like for WotC's OGL.
Yeah, I think, and so if you guys have missed that, what happened with Wizard of the Coast and they're changing some of their core licensing stuff and how that worked. We did talk about it at least maybe even a couple times, and around when that happened over the last couple of years now. Holy smokes! So do go back on our podcast and look for that and check that out. We did talk about it, but these are all, in our opinion, maybe not to speak for you, Seth, that these are outcomes of what happened with that, and people that are honestly throwing out there. We have choices, we have ideas, we have maybe gameplay we want to explore, and money talks. They look at this Kickstarter. They asked for $20,000 and well over $1 million. We're out here, and myself included, and Seth supporting these Kickstarters. We're not afraid to delve into new systems and try out other tabletop games. A lot of them generally play close to the same, and you'll find a system that you love. And as long as they're fun and they have new takes on things, it's fresh. It's pretty awesome.
I think we'll eventually find that D&D is going to be people's kind of gateway to role-playing games, but then they will filter out into other systems that are easier or better just for them or fit their play style more. Yeah. I have no less than 7 probably different systems on my shelf, 2 of which I use, but others I want to give a try. And I will probably pick up Daggerheart as well, because, I mean, that's not gonna be small.
No, it's not.
A lot of people correctly attribute D&D's resurgence to Critical Role.
I would agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
And any system they're playing is going to bring in a lot of people to that system. So when they officially, fully transition to Daggerheart, I can see people getting in on Daggerheart to start off with, as opposed to D&D, and who knows what Hasbro is going to do, or WotC will do if D&D isn't a cash cow anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think it'll be. Make no mistake, D&D is huge.
Oh yeah, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere. But to Seth's point, they've been the reigning place to go, and they've had the market share, so to speak, for a really long time. And we're now living in an era where people can build out their systems and get crowdfunding to put alternatives out there, and we're going to start seeing that start to eat away at Hasbro, or WotC. So it'll be interesting to see over the next, we'll call it, few years, how that plays out, how they react. Do they pivot and maybe just, I won't say abandon D&D, but do they find another platform altogether, or Seth, frankly, do they maybe try and buy somebody out?
I mean, they're corporate. That's kind of what corporations do.
Yes, they do.
I could see them attempting to buy out another system that's coming up on them in popularity, and they'll be like, yeah, we wanted to get some of their mechanics, but there's nothing most of these systems have an open gaming license, like D&D tried to get rid of, and it will serve these creators well as other smaller creators make third-party content for their games. That's
Yeah.
part of what's keeping D&D going so strong, is they have such a good third-party creation community. But if they start jumping ship for Daggerheart, MCDM, Kobold Press, DC20, we might you could be left with like just the adventures that WotC produces, and those have been suffering in quality lately. They need to get back and refocus on some of that.
Absolutely. All right.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good covering of this.
Yeah, let us know what you think down below, or if you've checked out any other systems, or if you have some that you think we should take a look at. Comment down below. Have you tried DC20? Have you tried a playtest to Daggerheart or any of these other systems? Let us know. Or if you're a true diehard 5e or Pathfinder fan, let us know. Or we just as an FYI, go back and check out our virtual tabletop discussion. We had a guest on for that as well, and we talked about different online virtual tabletops that you can use to play these games. If you're interested in that, check out our video as well, and let us know your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. Give us a like and a subscribe if you want to help out the channel any. But aside from that, you want to call it a day, Chris?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Later.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood podcast. For more information and past episodes, please visit our website at galacticdriftwood.space or subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, please deactivate your cranial downlinks, collect your towels, and be sure to watch your step as you exit our gravity well.